Уважаемые дамы и господа,
Ladies and gentlemen, the plenary session of the 11th St. Petersburg International Gas Forum is now starting. Gas Industry of Russian Federation. Priorities for the development under the new conditions.
Вас приветствует губернатор Санкт-Петербурга,
Governor of St. Petersburg, Mr. Alexander Beglov, and his welcoming address. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. I'm very glad to welcome you to St. Petersburg, our beautiful hometown. I'm very happy that it's been 11 years in a row that we have this St. Petersburg International Gas Forum. This year, the international circumstances are quite complicated, which makes me even more happy to see our international colleagues that came here despite all the challenging conditions. Welcome. The world is now dealing with global challenges. Energy procurement and energy sufficiency is now high in the international agenda. There is no doubt today that there is no alternative to gas to support economy, transport, logistics. There is no other alternative to improve ecological situation as well. We are now facing how the social well-being of population of plenty of countries, including our European neighbors, actually depend on the gas and its usage in utilities sphere. For many years, PJSC Gazprom has been a partner of St. Petersburg. We've been working together, solving problems of different levels of complications. Today, St. Petersburg is gasified on the highest level in Russia. The share of gas in energy balance is now 90%. St. Petersburg almost doesn't use coal and other kind of reserve fuels. In 2022, St. Petersburg has launched transport reform. One of its characteristics was the transition of a part of ground transportation to the Ngv Fuel. This year, we purchased 2,000 Ngv-fueled public transportation buses. There is also a plan to increase the share of utility equipment that will be working on gas. St. Petersburg provides stimulus and benefits for private drivers and state and city enterprises that are transitioning to gas. There is a city law that gives transportation tax benefit for the owners of Ngv-fueled vehicles, and this benefit will last for 5 years. Together with PJSC Gazprom, we're building a very reliable transport infrastructure. We're working with other enterprises as well. By the way, the government of Russia has made a decision to provide subsidies to the region that, in theory, will stimulate their transition to the Ngv fuel. This is very great idea not only for St. Petersburg, but for other regions of the country as well. I'd like to note that together with subsidiaries of PJSC Gazprom in St. Petersburg, we successfully implement the Techno Hub projects. Now we have more than 400 residents from Russia and other countries, and I'm really grateful to the colleagues who making their contribution to this project. In the special economic zone, Gazprom Neft is now developing the foundation for the development of new technologies in oil processing industry. St. Petersburg is fully cooperating with Gazprom and other subsidiary companies, not only in the gas field. Thus, in 2022, Gazprom has re-registered and moved to St. Petersburg. This year, we have signed an agreement of cooperation for the period till 2024. The plan is to implement additionally 64 projects. Within the program Gazprom to the Kids, we have built already 37 sports facilities, and this year we are commissioning another 32 of them. And I would like to thank the administration of Gazprom, its management, and Alexei Miller specifically. That's a great, gesture of support to the city. Together with PGSC Gazprom, we're working on the development of the road and the transport infrastructure. It was Gazprom's initiative to restore the Poltava sailboat. Those of you who have celebrated with us the Day of the Navy have seen that boat. It's actually now rebuilt the way it was created during the times of Peter the Great. There is also a plan to rebuild the Petrovsky Stadium together with Gazprom. St. Petersburg enterprises are now partners with Gazprom. Those are scientific institutes and enterprises. Together with Gazprom, they are now building technologies to produce compressed natural gas. There are a lot of scientific projects dedicated to the exploration and processing. We do our best to implement projects for further exploration of the world ocean and the Arctic. For us, it's really very important that the International Gas Forum takes place in St. Petersburg. This is a very special platform for us. We did our best to make it as comfortable for you as possible. We tried our best to make it possible for you to meet your new partners, sign new agreements, demonstrate the results of your hard work. I'm quite convinced that St. Petersburg International Gas Forum will become a success. I want to wish you not only a successful business program, but also some cultural time. Please visit St. Petersburg. Please visit theaters, museums. Pushkin and Ekaterininsky Palace is not far from here, by the way. I know that every single one of you has a cultural agenda, and I'm happy to see you, and welcome to St. Petersburg. Thank you very much, Mr. Beglov. We welcome the participants of the plenary session. Deputy Chairman of the Board of PGSC Gazprom, Head of Department 623, Oleg Aksutin. Chief Executive Director of the National Irony Oil Company, Mr. Mahsen Hadjastemecher.
В работе пленарного заседания с видеоприветствием принимает участие вице-президент
Deputy President of the Chinese National Petroleum Corporation, PetroChina, Mr. Huan Yunjian, will be participating via video conference. Moderator of the plenary session, the Director of the Foundation for National Energy Security, First Vice Rector for External Communications, Head of the Politology Department at Financial University, the Government of the Russian Federation, Konstantin Simonov. Thank you so much, dear friends. I see we have a full house here. Well, that's a great thing to see. Let's begin. Usually the role of the moderator is to warm up the audience before the beginning of the plenary session. I don't think you need the warming up this year. I will probably need to cool you down a little bit, though. Everything is intense, and I mean, there is no doubt that the whole circumstance is quite intriguing. The winter is coming, and there are plenty of questions about the nearest future. But you know what I'm more worried about? About the midterm future. My hopes are that we will not only discuss what will be happening to us in the next month, but we will also discuss the midterm and long-term perspectives of Russia for the gas export and import. And with this, I'd like to give the floor to Oleg Aksuta, our first speaker, Vice Chairman of the Board, and also the Head of the Department 623 of the company. Please, Mr. Aksuta, the floor is yours. Thank you, Konstantin. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear friends, dear partners of the Gazprom company. I'm happy to welcome all of you here at this platform of St. Petersburg International Gas Forum. We're going to be talking about the gas industry of Russia and the priorities for its development under new conditions. How about we define what are these new conditions? What is changing in the new energy? What trends are we seeing now? The current trend is the demand for stability. Both consumers and manufacturers of energy would like to have more predictable prices when they're doing their business. The situation on the market is a paradox today. The spot prices are very volatile, but at the same time, the demand for long-term contracts is very high. The end consumers in Europe would like to have gas for the more predictable prices. But the investors from the Western companies are afraid to invest in this new project. How so? Well, obviously, because the regulatory policy is very unpredictable. European politicians for the last years have been very methodologically, sending us signals about the need to develop oil and gas industry. Remember that green energy transition paradigm. EU administration has declared that the natural gas is just a transitional fuel. Now, they are declaring non-market ways to regulate the market. They are even talking about gas price cap and about seizing excessive revenue from the energy companies. Let's take the example of Germany. Not long ago, the government of the country has declared the beginning of the negotiations with Qatar about the supplies of the LNG to substitute Russian pipeline gas. But so far, there is no result to that. Qatar was interested in long-term contracts, but the German government was willing to cooperate only in the framework of the short-term agreements. Well, the existing contracts do not correspond to the declared goals to decarbonize Europe. And what do we have now? Germany builds terminals to import LNG, but there is no LNG to bring there. There is no surprise, thus, that many Western oil and gas companies decide to invest not in the extraction, but into shareholder payments or share buyback, for example. Such underfinancing of exploration and production, together with the increasing complication of development of new fields, will obviously lead to the deficit in resources. This disbalance will bring another wave of increasing prices. What are the trends that are now going away? Well, this forced transition to the renewables is now remaining there in the past. Within the so-called green agenda, we were trying to get rid of the fossil fuels. The energy crisis in the European market that we are witnessing today is once again demonstrating quite clearly that renewables can never be an alternative to oil, gas, nuclear power plants, and even coal during this very complicated period for the economy. At the same time, this forced transition from fossil fuels to the renewables is actually very risky, but European politicians try not to think about that. Well, first, in the world, there is not enough electric storage, which builds the risk of lower reliability of the whole energy system in general. Secondly, this so-called transition, which in European case very much depends on the supplies from Russia, will increase the dependence of European energy from this highly monopolized market of renewables equipment. As we see, this so-called green agenda is basically pushed a bit away. And well, these very progressive Europeans are now talking about coal. What are the priorities for the development in gas industry in Russia and Gazprom? The main priority for Russia is the energy safety for Russia. It's not enough to have enough resource, to have big resource base. The most important here is to use it wisely and efficiently. Natural gas plays a very important role in the energy balance of Russia. Its share in the structure of the energy balance is about 50%. Nevertheless, the Russian gas market still has a lot of growth potential. For many years, The main center for gas extraction in Russia used to be the Nadim-Portazovsky region, where the first gas was extracted in 1953. In the last decade, the exploration and extraction is moving slowly but steadily to the north and east of the country, specifically to Yamal, Eastern Siberia, and Far East. These new fields will provide the resource for, a lot of time to supply Russian gas consumers and for export as well. Already by 2035, the share of these new regions in the overall amount of extracted gas will amount to no less than 65%. Of course, this happens together with the development of transportation, and I'd like to note here the system of Ngv Fuel, also the power of Siberia, Sakhalin, Khabarovsk, Vladivostok. There is another large-scale project, this so-called Eastern gas supply system. It will bring together the UGSS of Russia from the European part with the part of gas transport system that has already been created in the east. This project will become another step in the implementation of the so-called Eastern gas program that our company is actually participating in. Considering the many years of success in coordination of, implementation of this program, Gazprom is willing to become responsible for the same functions within the future exploration and development of the northern deposits. Sanctions in this very complicated, economical situation is not a problem, but it's a stimulus for Gazprom. The great role today we consider to be the stimulus to the increasing gas consumption on the internal market. Well, in the first place, I'm talking about the development of gas processing, the small-scale LNG for autonomous gasification of our countries. Now, a couple of words about gas processing. The reserve base of our company is comprised of plenty of different components, which makes it possible for us to diversify the manufacturing of various products with the high added value. In order to use the hydrocarbon fuel and hydrocarbons to the maximum, we are increasing the processing segment of our business. We are improving the existing capacities, and there are large-scale projects to build new large manufacturing sites and processing plants to the east and the west of the country. Currently, Gazprom is implementing two new big, very unique processing plants, a Morsky processing plant and another complex that processes ethanol-containing gas in the region of Ust-Luga. When we will implement these two projects, we will increase the processing volumes of Gazprom 3 times, and at the same time, the capacities for the processing will come up to 157 BCMs. Now, among our products of Amursky processing plants in Ust-Luga, we'll have ethanol, we have LHG, LNG, helium, and other products. I believe that the diversification here will optimize the whole revenue structure of Gazprom and will provide for a very reliable incoming cash flow for future growth of the business. Development of this area of our business will require improvement of technologies and development of new equipment, and we are quite convinced that this will have a beneficial effect on the other industrial areas and will improve the competitiveness of Russia in the world. Gasification is a very important project for social economical development of the country. The government of Russian Federation has set the goal to achieve 100% of technically possible gasification by 2030. Gazprom is steadily moving towards the achievement of this goal. We are actively working with the regions. Through gasification, we plan to see the increase in the demand in the internal market by additional 20 BCMs by 2030. Another very important growing segment is Ngv Fuel, obviously. Usage of gas and transport brings down the emissions. Ngv, a natural gas fuel, is a very promising fuel both for automobiles, railway, marine, and river transport. The price of methane is 2 times lower than the price of petroleum or diesel, and at the same time it brings down the emissions by 10 times almost. The natural gas provides for ensures the fifth class of ecological safety of the fuel, which is especially important for the big cities. One of the key factors here for the development of the Ngv sector is the creation of gas filling infrastructure. The volume of the natural gas consumed as an Ngv fuel has grown almost by 4 times to 1.3 BCMs. Now, this speeded up gasification of the country helps us to develop the infrastructure of gas filling stations. The long-term potential of the gas consumption in this segment we estimate to be about 10 BCMs. And the Gazprom Group has already transitioned 13,000 transport units, which is more than 60% of transportation. Now let's talk about, well, the forecasts for the export of Gazprom from the point of view of diversification. Obviously, today, everyone is talking about new segments for their activity, new markets, but Gazprom did not start this work yesterday. This has been with us for many years already. The main destination for diversification of our export of our pipeline gas is obviously the East, which is not surprising at all. Since 2011 till 2021, the share of the Asia-Pacific region in the world gas consumption has grown from 19 to 23%. The biggest increase in the share of natural gas consumption in the world happened in China. During these 10 years, it has doubled from 4 to 9%. Let's compare. The share of Europe in the world gas consumption in these same 10 years has dropped from 18 to 14%. In the last 5 years, the increase in gas consumption in China amounted to 160 BCMs, which is basically comparable with the annual consumption of such large countries as Germany, France, Czech Republic and Greece. In the first 6 months of 2022, because of COVID restriction, gas consumption in China has slowed down, but the analysts believe this is just a pause before this new rapid increase. The forecast today is that by the end of next year's, the consumption of natural gas in China will amount to the level of all countries of Europe altogether. There is another leader in the area of gas consumption is India. There is this drastic increase in the growth rate in gas consumption in the long-term perspective. By 2040, in the countries of the Asia-Pacific region, we shall expect more than 500 billion cubic meters growth. Basically, that's 70% additionally in comparison with the year 2020. In China, we can expect increase in gas consumption more than 2 times, in India more than 2.5 times. And we know that the Asia-Pacific countries will increase the import of pipeline gas. Some people tend to mention this so-called turning east of the Russian economy and the gas industry in particular. But when we say turning, well, that sounds as something spontaneous, and I don't believe that's the right word to use in the current situation. PGAC Gazprom has been named the coordinator of the Eastern Gas Program back in 2002. Thus, the diversification of our work and, well, this so-called turning east has been with us for 20 years already. I would like to separately underline, just recently, in February 2020, our company has signed a new contract to supply gas to China with the use of the so-called Far East route. The volume of annual supplies will amount to 10 BCMs, and considering the previously signed contract, which is the Power of Siberia, the overall volumes will be 48 BCMs. Gazprom sees bigger demand coming from the Chinese party when it comes to gas supply through the Power of Siberia pipeline, even when we see the slowing down of gas demand in the country, which makes it obvious Russian gas is still in very high demand on the Chinese market. It's very important that when we develop cooperation in gas industry, Russia and China protect national interest of both countries, and we do not really bring it up to mutual dependence. We talked about forecasts for, priority markets and what's going to be happening with Gazprom, but it will be unjust to not mention Europe. Well-being of Europe in the recent, 10 years actually was built on those relevantly cheap fuel for the EU coming from Russia. So the export of the natural gas to Europe since 1967 correlates quite well with the improvement in the well-being of the EU. We see that, well, the volume of electricity production made with gas has grown 7 times, more than 38%. And during the peak demand, the role of the natural gas has increased even more visibly. But unfortunately, the politics of European countries, which tends to get rid of Russian pipeline gas, dooms Europe to witness the decrease of economy, low efficiency, and bad competitiveness. With the beginning of sanctions war, this process has worsened. We see that Europe is moving towards deep recession and deindustrialization. The utility prices are growing, and the social intensity is just increasing. European countries has opened the Pandora box when they started to trust the spot market. As a result, the countries of Europe that at some point has hurt Gazprom and actually preserved the contractual agreements related to the oil with the reference to the oil products are stably receiving gas with the actually reasonable prices. The other European countries are now, enjoying the roller coaster rides with this extremely volatile market indexes. And energy policy of Europe ended up with changing this axiom of the gas market. This Asian prime is now in the past. Now we see the European prime in comparison with the Asian index. But the current crisis on the European gas market has also its advantages, but not for Europeans. One of the main beneficiaries of the current situations is the United States of America. The LNG from the USA was not competitive on the European market in the past because the price was quite high and there was this very big carbon footprint. Now we see increasing demand in the LNG supplies from USA to Europe. Well, you can draw your own conclusions. We don't really see, unfortunately, European administration making any steps to overcome that crisis. And to be honest, there is no proper alternative to the supply of Russian pipeline gas for Europe. There is not a single country that can provide resources comparable with the resources located in Siberia or Yamal. There is no other company that can increase supplies with such infrastructure of pipelines as Gazprom has. LNG does not appear and develop in an instance. There is no promising increase for the development of the LNG market in 2023-2024. LNG producers in the Northern America will only be able to increase their supplies in the long term, and Europeans can expect that not earlier than in 2025. At the same time, Europe will have to compete for these volumes with the importers from the Asian countries. As a result, there will be a deficit of LNG on the world market, which means higher prices and less availability for countries that have less money, obviously. There is a solution to this disbalance on the European market, which is Nord Stream 2, but we see that this obvious solution is not the one European politicians actually like. Nevertheless, every war ends up with a peace agreement, and every crisis is at some point restored. And if Europe demonstrates its will to preserve the status of the industrially developed regions, the European administration will have to admit that natural gas is ready-to-use, ecologically and economically efficient fuel that can be used to reset the economy, and the whole infrastructure is already there. Concluding the discussion of the energy market of Europe, I cannot help but mention the change of our perception of the so-called green agenda. Complicated crises make people rethink existing and pre-existing agendas. How real is the climatic challenge? Just recently, an international group of scientists that oversee the global climate has published a report saying that there is no climatic catastrophe. In this document, signed by more than 1,000 scientists, states that current climatic cataclysms is the result of geological and space processes that we cannot possibly influence. If some people are still have doubts about the nature of climatic changes, well, they are wrong, and they don't really need to break down the world energy for the benefit of the renewables. At the same time, Europe and its energy policy is now not looking towards the level of CO2 emissions, but on the availability of the fuel. Thus, the new British Prime Minister, Liz Truss, has already declared their desire to cancel the moratorium on the extraction of shale gas with the method of hydraulic fracturing that was there since 2019 because of the higher seismic activity in the area of hydraulic fracturing and because of ecological activists protests. It's obvious that this idea is very populistic and will not have much influence. By 2030, the share of Europe in the extraction of gas will decrease by 30% in comparison with 2021. Moreover, in many of European countries today, especially in the utilities sector, there is this very high demand in coal and even wood that has been used in pre-industrial era. To conclude, the role of natural gas in the world energy mix will keep growing. Gas market of Russia will keep dynamically develop with the help of gas processing, gasification of regions, and also increased use of Ngv fuel. The center of the world gas industry is moving towards the east. Natural gas becomes very demanded out there in the Asian region. And well, to a large extent, because of that, the gas industry of Russia, in any situation, will keep its leadership position in the world energy market. European countries are, doing their experiment to bring down the volumes of import of natural gas from Russia, but the experiment only demonstrates that Europe's well-being was built on the energy supplied from Russia. Unfortunately, we're now stepping down from that green vector, and the industrial conditions of the region is worsening day after day. Coming back to the perspectives of the natural gas in the global scale, we can assume that the world gas market will have the new shape. We see new alliances, new unions, new partnerships signed. And as an example, I can demonstrate you this many years agreement with the Chinese National Oil and Gas Corporation. There is a very dynamically developing Russian-Turkish cooperation in the gas area. These pipelines, Turkish Stream and Blue Stream, are successfully in operation, stably providing Russian gas to the Turkish market. And we also, by the way, are widening the geography of our gas friendship. In 2022, Gazprom has signed memorandum of understanding with the national Iranian oil companies. And we see here our colleagues from China, Turkey, Iran, which is another proof that strategic cooperation for the leading players of the gas market is crucially important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you allow me, immediately I will ask you a couple of questions, and later we'll come back to the topic. Speaking about the winter which is coming, we understand we have lots of uncertainties. The European Union might introduce another sanction package, introduce gas and something else. Other ideas might come up to their minds. And here we have a clear understanding that at any given moment, we might expect the closure of a gas supply. Alexei Miller and President Putin on many occasions declared their vision on this, but basically they cannot bring about European solutions to European problems. After all, we understand that such prospect of complete closure of supply does exist, and I believe that Gazprom might think it over too. Currently, financially, the dimension in supply is offset by the price growth. But later on, it might change. You had some words about the Eastern program, about the construction of pipelines, gas pipelines, so it is also an ambitious project. We were happy to see dividends coming to Gazprom, but all in all, what is Gazprom's vision for the future? We see that the risks are rather high, the risks of losing European revenue. Thank you very much for this question. In terms of investment project implementation, investment program implementation, what we see is that it is still there at the level as we have it today. The volatility is about 10 to 15%, depending on the year. The projects we are planning for today might be implemented in the current situation, as we see it today. Speaking about our vision for the coming 5 years, we do not expect any significant changes in our program implementation. Thank you. You gave us ambitious figures in gas processing. In this regard, here is my question. Technologically, is Gazprom ready to implement this program? I mean, in terms of gas processing and liquefied gas, of course, it also brings about some questions. I started your program, it says import substitution program and fixing errors, fixing mistakes. So it means that we do recognize some mistakes. Of course, we do have other problems like Turkish stream, for instance. But all in all, what is your assessment of the current situation with import substitution? And is Gazprom ready to implement projects in gas processing without partners who left us, I mean European partners? Gas import substitution program didn't start yesterday. It was the program that we have been carried out starting from 2000. And as of today, we have substituted everything relevant to which has to do with the gas pipeline. We use only Russian-produced pipeline. Then various pumping equipment is also manufactured in Russia. In this regard, we are moving forward, and we're doing our best to enhance efficiency and to improve the life cycle, the longevity. As for gas processing activity, yes, we have been working here too. All in all, we feel quite as a reliable partner here. Currently, we are finalizing the works in these areas. For LNG, first and foremost, let me say that we have our own projects for substitution in LNG. We have been also cooperating with the government, with our government, in order to establish some hubs for LNG across the country. And of course, we engage other stakeholders who are interested, but it requires a bit of work. So in terms of import substitution, I would say this is the dimension that calls for more attention. Briefly, that would be my answer. But all in all, you are not shocked, and Gazprom is ready to face this shock. I mean, no, we're not shocked. You know, the exhibition that you mentioned, the exhibition that you can see here at the forum platform, many exhibits have to do with import substitution, or maybe I should say import independence and being proactive here. And it covers lots of areas of our work, starting from materials and coming up to processes, technological processes, in the frame of construction of new systems. So as you see, we have an immense amount of work going on. As for import itself, you know, we have the first grade import and we have other types of imports. Anyway, our domestic producers are very rapid in responding to the changing situation, and they are aware of the objectives that we set in order to achieve them. We just need to understand how deeply we need to go in input substitution. I will come back to you with the questions, but now let me give the floor to our guests. We have a video speech from the Vice President of the Chinese National Petroleum Corporation, CNPC, Huang Yunzhan. First, let us listen to this speech from our Chinese colleague. Mr. Moderator, distinguished Mr. Aksutin, dear friends, good afternoon. I thank you for the invitation. It is a great honor for me to take part in this forum on behalf of the CNPC online. In 2022, amid a lingering pandemic, fast-evolving global energy landscape, and increasing complex geopolitics, many new transformations arise in the energy market. First, the COVID-19 continues to hamper global oil and gas demand. Second, profound restructurings take place across global supply chain, value chain, and financial system. And industrial and supply chains are clustering around one region or one country and the neighboring states. Many states are considering local currency settlement and building a cross-border payment system. Third, geopolitics break the balance of traditional energy. Energy supplies and centers are flowing to different destinations as consumers and producers are seeking to build new cooperation ties. Fourth, extreme weathers push the global industry to speed up green and low-carbon transition. As stricter control on carbon emissions becomes international consensus, more and more states and companies pledge to achieve carbon neutral or net zero in the coming decades. Impacted by multiple factors, this year international gas market takes new features. First, global gas market is being reshaped at a faster pace. Supplies from major producers are changing, with LNG taking a larger share in international gas trade. Europe is looking for more LNG. From January to August this year, LNG import to Europe jumped by 63% compared to the same period last year. More LNG is flowing into Europe, and second, Asian LNG buyers get back to medium and long-term terms and are dropping. So second, the high gas prices push Asian LNG buyers to sign mid and long-term contracts. Between January to August this year, the average price of GTM was $33.8 per MMBTU, which is threefold increase versus the same period last year. TTF average price was $37 per MMBTU, which is 4.8 times higher than last year. Amidst high gas prices, countries focus more on reliability and security of their supply. International energy companies, traders, and Asian LNG buyers are moving faster to sign long-term contracts. Between January and July this year, all in all, there were 62 million tons of long-term contracts, which is an increase compared to 2021. Third, high gas prices will dampen demand in the medium to long term, setting the stage for faster growth of other energy sources, renewables. In the first 8 months, gas consumption in Europe dropped by 15%, over 15 BCM. Germany, China, South Korea, and other importing countries are moving faster in their in using coal, fuel, and other nuclear power. Global gas demand is estimated to reach 4 TCM this year, which is a decrease 0.3% compared to this period last year. The second negative growth since 2020 in the past 10 years in the medium to long term is expected. There will be a structural slowdown in gas demand growth. As for Chinese gas market, against the backdrop of energy transition, rebounding economy, and government push for carbon peak and neutrality goals, in 2021, domestic gas output exceeded 200 BCM, which is up to 7.8%. The volume surpassing 10 BCM for the 5 years. China imported 170 BCM of gas from over 30 states. In 2021, China consumed 370 BCM of gas, which is an increase by 12% last year. With industrial fuel, city gas, power, and chemicals taking 40, 32, 18, and 10% respectively. Moreover, construction of supporting infrastructure will also speed up. By the end of last year, total length of pipelines in China surpassed 110,000 kilometers, and the capacity of LNG terminals exceeded 100 million tons per annum. In the first half of the year, impacted by high oil and gas prices and COVID-19, apparent gas consumption in China reached 183.4 BCM. In the first 6 months, the supply domestically produced gas and imported pipeline gas saw rapid growth, 6% increase and 11% respectively, while LNG imports fell over 20%. In the second half, as Chinese economy rebounds at a faster pace, gas consumption is estimated to pick up and reach around 380 BCM. Looking forward, the Chinese gas market will embrace an important period of opportunities. As China expedites energy revolution and pushes for carbon peak and neutrality, natural gas, being a clean and low-carbon fossil energy, will be irreplaceable for building a clean, low-carbon, safe and efficient modern energy system. In the next 15 to 20 years, gas will continue to grow in complementarity with coal and integrate with renewable energies in China, where city gas, industrial fuel, and power generation become 3 major consumers of gas over time. In the meantime, as Chinese gas market contributes to be liberalized, challenges for market development and competition among multiple gas sources also emerge. China remains committed to boosting domestic exploration and production for a steady increase of domestic gas output. In addition, newly added import pipeline gas and coastal LNG terminals are coming to stream. It is estimated that by 2025, LNG receiving capacity will reach 190 million tons per year, doubling it compared to previous year. Diversified gas sources will intensify competition, where competitive price will be the key in winning the market. As we see in 2022, high import gas prices are severely hampering demand. Currently, electricity from gas power plants is among the most expensive in China. A major challenge for natural gas development is how to gain a competitive edge in a low-carbon energy system. CNPC puts forward the vision of becoming a world-class internationally integrated energy company built to last, and has mapped out a 3-step approach: clean alternatives, strategical placement, and finally, green development, green transition. Being a value creator and growth driver of strategic importance, natural gas will be instrumental for CNPC to transform itself into an integrated energy company. Meanwhile, we will move faster in promoting coordinated and integrated growth between oil, gas, and new energies, speeding up new energies and new businesses applying negative carbon technology in scale such as integrated development of wind, solar, and gas power generation, geothermal, hydrogen, and CCUS technology in an effort to build a green industry structure and low-carbon energy supply system. Globally, energy and environmental issues are pressing tasks to be resolved. It is the common goal of all countries to ensure energy security, enhance energy efficiency, while considering energy and cutting emissions. To advance the sustained development of gas industry, I wish to propose the following for our cooperation. First, we should enhance international cooperation and work to establish long-term, stable, and sustainable partnerships between importing and exporting states so that coordination could be strengthened to cope with emergencies in the energy market and ensure sustained gas supply with competitive prices. Second, we should deepen international oil and gas cooperation and step up cooperation across the value chain, where cooperation including E&P, infrastructure construction, market development, and gas market development in general. Third, amid global energy transition, we should work together to advance the integrated development of gas and new energies and build a balanced energy mix. Fourth, we should boost research and innovation to lower the cost across the value chain and contribute collective wisdom for the sustainable development of natural gas industry. I thank you very much for your attention.
Господину Юньчжаню я по понятным причинам не могу задать вопрос.
Unfortunately, I cannot ask my question to Mr. Yunjian, but it is interesting that he mentioned structuring threats to gas, but on the other hand, he gave us a forecast for a growing consumption. But I think we will come back to the strategic development of gas, and it is my pleasure to give the floor to our guest from Iran, Managing Director of the National Iranian Oil Company, Mohsen Khoestemehr. The floor is yours.
خانم‌ها و آقایان، عرض سلام دارم خدمت همه شما و حضورتون رو گرامی می‌دارم.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to welcome you at the plenary of the International Gas Forum. It is a great honor for me to be a keynote speaker at the plenary session. As Managing Director of the Iranian National Oil Company, I would like to explain and to share with you the vision of the Islamic Republic Iran as the major supply and regulator of gas industry and be a partner of the Russian Federation. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all well aware that gas consumption has a major share in the international energy portfolio due to its environmental, economical, and low price characteristics for consumers. Gas share in the energy portfolio of various states is constantly growing. The Islamic Republic of Iran and Russia are two major and important gas exporting countries with 27% of global gas reserves and benefiting from strategic location and closeness to the existing consumption markets and potential markets in the future. and having capacities for production, processing, and transportation of gas, they are capable of playing an effective and efficient role and have a final say in reshaping the global energy mix. They are also capable of playing a major role in future trends of energy consumption and energy diplomacy. As managing director of the Iranian National Oil Company at this conference, I'm willing to announce that Iran is ready and can play an efficient and positive role in using the fledgling opportunities for the Russian and global gas industry. Ladies and gentlemen, oil and gas field development program of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the coming 8 years requires investment to the tune of $170 billion. 70 billion out of these amounts will go for the gas production sector. Having 155 billion of crude oil, the Islamic Republic of Iran is placed second in terms of crude oil reserves among OPEC member states and fourth in terms of oil and gas reserves globally. On the other hand, the Islamic Republic of Iran has 22 gas fields with the amount of recoverable gas reserves of up to 32 tons of cubic meters. That makes her second after Russia globally. With this amount of gas reserves and productivity of up to 1 billion cubic meters a day, these production capacities are sufficient for another century to go. In terms of overall oil and gas reserves, the Islamic Republic of Iran is the first in the world. On top of that, the Islamic Republic of Iran has 19 gas processing facilities capable of processing over 1 billion cubic meter a day. During the upcoming 8 years, we plan to increase these capacities by 50%. Over the last 2 decades, despite rigid sanctions, the Islamic Republic of Iran managed to exploit the biggest gas field in the world, the South Pass. The works have been carried out and conducted by the National Iranian Oil Company with engineering and technical support of domestic consulting and subcontracting companies, engaging the potential of Iranian producers of spare parts and equipment. We have also engaged young Iranian specialists. The project has been finalized. It is noteworthy that during its implementation, we also managed to boost the industrial infrastructure of the country and export technological skills, services, and goods of our country. It is worth mentioning that the relations between the Islamic Republic of Iran and Russia are strategically important. In our approach, we are committed to complementing Russia in terms of sustained gas supply. Given the considerable amount of gas reserves in the Islamic Republic of Iran and given the geopolitical situation, the multi-branch and national gas network, engineering and technological capacities of Iranian consulting and subcontracting companies, the Islamic Republic of Iran is capable of generating new opportunities for our states by connecting to the gas network to the region were capable of providing a significant potential for gas export. Iranian National Oil Company is ready to join projects for gas production and processing, and to launch the basis for complete production chain and to ensure monetization of these projects. Thus, while increasing production capacities, we can use swap transactions from the north to the south of Iran using national gas network. And by reducing costs for distribution, we will enhance the economic dimension, thus reducing costs, gas-related costs in consuming states. It also includes neighboring states. On top of that, it will boost the economic growth of the region and will reduce poverty rate and improve quality of life of the population in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, during the whole human history, rivers were the source of life, labor, prosperity, and development of the humanity. In the new era, known also as the gas era, gas pipelines are going to play the same role as rivers used to do and will lay the platform for growing industries, development, and prosperity of its consumers. Fortunately, over the last years, Gazprom, Rosneft, Tatneft, and other Russian companies carried out studies in Iran on exploiting a whole range of gas and oil fields. National Iranian Oil Company is ready to use the outcomes of these studies to conduct shortly detailed talks and sign appropriate contracts for the production at these fields. Besides, 2 months ago, an agreement on cooperation was signed between the Iranian National Oil Company and the Russian company Gazprom in oil and gas field production, gas swap contracts, oil and petroleum products, infrastructure and LNG development, as well as technological cooperation. As of today, the cooperation in the frame of this agreement is in the pipeline. The agreement on cooperation encompasses the full oil and gas field production called Northern Pass and Kish. With their complete implementation, the capacities of gas production of Iran will see an increase by 200 million cubic meters a day. Swap and export capacity of both companies will go higher in result. Besides, taking into account many gas and oil fields, Iranian National Oil Company welcomes other Russian companies, and we will be happy to engage other companies for cooperation in the long run. In conclusion, I would like to express my sincerest gratitude to the organizers of the 11th edition of the St. Petersburg International Gas Forum. And I would also like to note that this forum might give a push to the growing cooperation between Iran and the Russian Federation. Let me also express my personal gratitude to Mr. Miller for his active participation in organizing this forum and for inviting the delegation of the Islamic Republic of Iran to take part here.
Господин директор,
Thank you very much. Director General, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for coming, by the way. You know, it's not a common knowledge that Russia and Iran has been cooperating already during Soviet times, by the way, and even swap supplies were already agreed during Soviet times, and we're now possibly talking about new forms of cooperation between Russia and Iran. But obviously, the question is not only about upstream projects, right? It's also about the common marketing strategy and everything that happens, you know, up the pipe. The companies that have built their own market themselves, when it started working against it, they decided that, well, they have to fight it somehow, and they're now suggesting very anti-market mechanisms like the price cap or like the single purchasing window that cancels all the existing contracts. So the question arises, what are the gas manufacturers are going to do about this? Because what we see happening to them is quite cynical, because, you know, they used to say, here are the rules of the game, and now the buyers themselves are canceling the rules of the game. How do you see cooperation between Russia and Iran from the point of view of the presence on the gas market? Remember, there was this forum of countries exporting gas, and there were plenty of questions about what was happening, because every country has its own strategies, conditions. How do you see cooperation between Russia and Iran when it comes to export and conditions of presence on the export markets, please? Thank you for your question. The topic of energy in total is one of the most important in the world today. All the world community is closely following the dynamics in the fuel issue. Every country needs gas, oil, and other energy sources to cover their needs. I am very much convinced our very close cooperation with Russian Federation can guarantee some stability in the world energy market, and us working together can help regulate somehow this very volatile global energy market. An agreement on joint exploration of gas fields that we signed with Russia actually aimed to build closer cooperation. And we wanted to build that closer cooperation not only in the gas production area, not only in the export area, but it was also made to somehow stabilize the energy sources market on the world. As I mentioned before, in the nearest 10 years, there is no possibility to have any real alternative to the gas in the energy mix of the countries. Gas will not disappear from the energy portfolios of countries in the nearest future. There's no alternative to that. Thank you. So you're convinced that we're gonna see growing demand for the gas all over the world. Is that so? Yes. I believe that those who argue that in the future we will see lower gas demand Well, this doesn't make any sense, to be honest. There is no engineering rationale behind that. Those who argue that, they say that, well, we have to consider the so-called green energy. We have to consider getting rid of hydrocarbons. Well, that's all fine and well, but somehow we have to deal with gas suppliers' needs. Mr. Eksutin, I wanted to ask you the same question.
Опять же, возвращаясь к выступлению китайского товарища, мы же видим ситуацию ценовую.
You see what's happening to the price,
Раньше газ выступал
right?
как достаточно дешевый товар.
Gas used to
С
be
нефтью особенно и обращали
a cheap
внимание на его экологические.
asset, right? Especially in comparison with oil. There was a lot of talk about its ecological characteristics. But now you said that, well, this green agenda in Europe is now suspended. But doesn't this create a problem for gas? Because, well, now its ecological characteristics are no longer that important because, well, the ecological agenda is suspended. Wouldn't that make gas, a non-affordable luxury kind of product? What's your forecast for the gas in the nearest years? You know what you just said about the high price? You tried to discredit the gas? That's what you tried to convince me that gas is not a good thing. I have something to tell you. There are three main aspects here. First, the price that we are seeing right now. You can call it crazy, you can call it excessive. Is that a reflection of the logistical expenses related to gas? No, that is not so. This price is the result of non-responsible attitude towards the price forming. They put all on the spot market. I mean, they bid on the spot market, and here we have what we have. You just mentioned that European politicians themselves are saying these days that something seems to be wrong, and they are trying to somehow balance and mitigate what's happening to the price. At the same time, there are countries that have signed the long-term contracts. They are still buying gas with affordable prices, and there is nothing wrong with that. So, thing number one, the price that we see today is not an adequate price. This is not anything related to gas logistics or anything. This is the price we are paying for the unresponsible acts of behavior. Factor number two, there is this world gas market. The share of Europe in this world gas market is a bit more than 10%. It's about 14%. Gazprom today is diversifying the gas supply schemes, and we are now cooperating with Iran. While doing this, we understand that there might be some rebalancing of price parameters. That's another thing. And the last one, gas is a very flexible and optimal product that can provide for the energy safety of any country. This kind of product will always be required from our point of view. So we see the future of the natural gas as a bright one. And there is another thing related to the green agenda. You were right. There are two different lines of action: decarbonization and ecology. Issues related to emissions and the toxic footprint is a very important thing to work with. Natural gas actually deals with toxicity and emissions, and it deals with them perfectly, which makes it another added value. Thank you. I cannot help but agree with you. Climate and ecology are two completely different things. I have a question to Mr. Director here, Director General. In Russia, last year, for example, there was a lot of conversation about the need to being more active in promoting the green agenda, to, bid on the
Мне казалось, что после
ecological solutions. I thought this was going to change after February this year, but it didn't really change to completely. And we see, some incentives, like, for example, paying for hydrocarbons or something like that. I just would like to know what is happening in Iran. Is that so?
на правительственном уровне продвигается.
Does the government of Iran actually promoting the ecological agenda and decarbonization? How is it going with renewable energy sources development in Iran? Do the the managers of the country actually believe that this is a promising thing, or what is happening with hydrocarbons in Iran? So, here is our point of view on the renewable energy sources in Iran. Let's try and remember the following. The energy mix in different industrial sectors is a bit different. What we have to do is we have to increase the coefficient and, the share of the renewables in the industrial sector of economy. For our country, the most important thing is the following. The energy that we produce and export should be as profitable as possible for the country. At the same time, we try not to forget the following. While producing and exporting this kind of energy, we should never forget about ecology and the green agenda. More than $80 billion that are planned for the investment would be allocated remembering the need to minimize the hazardous emissions and remembering the need to preserve the ecological stability of the world. In our country, we care both for natural gas and renewables. It is all included in the agenda of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thank you so much. We will now conclude the plenary session. Unfortunately, we are running out of time already, though I have one last question to Mr. Aksutin, the last one. In the next 10 or 15 years, do you believe that we might see the appearance of the single common gas market, right? As you just said, in Europe, there is not such a big gas market, and Gazprom is very active in diversifying their efforts. Will that end up in creation of the common large gas market with the single pricing mechanisms, or it will be a different thing? It will be a completely different thing. Well, that's a cliffhanger. Thank you for that. And let's give that a round of applause. Colleagues, that is true. The times are tough, and but you know what? I see how the values that were obvious in the past are coming back. Warmth being one of them. We believe in warmth, we believe in the market, and we hope that the market instruments will survive there. Even though, well, I'm worried sometimes when I look at what is happening on the mass market. But let's hope that the market and honest competition will, in some form or another, come back to the European region. And us Europeans will somehow manage to avoid any dramatic and bad decisions that will make us pay the price. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause and have a great lunch break. Bon appetit and goodbye.